Hey, what's up, buddy? No expensive camera equipment today, just the camera laying on a book and got my Bible. And I told you I would do my own like little thing for you because I think it's really important that you understand what's going on. See, a lot of times people go and talk about Daniel in the lion's den. And when they talk about it, they talk about how brave he was and his faith and all these things. But there's another part to this that a lot of people miss. So let's do this really quick. If you got your Bible, open it up to Daniel chapter 6. That's on page 791 in my Bible. I don't know what number it is in yours. I'm just going to start reading while you find it. This is 6:1. It pleased Darius to appoint satraps to rule throughout the kingdom, with 3 administrators over them, one of whom was Daniel. The satraps were made accountable to them so that the king might not suffer loss. Now Daniel so distinguished himself among the administrators and the satraps at his exceptional qualities that the king planned to him over the whole kingdom. In other words, he trusted him. He was well favored, okay? And at this, the administrators and the satraps tried to find grounds for charges against Daniel, because haters are going to hate, right? And so they were trying to find some kind of conduct of government and affairs, but they were unable to do so. Stop right there. This is where people get messed up. So there were these guys that were after Daniel because he had integrity, because he can stand upright, and he had nothing to be ashamed of. And before I go any further, here's what I want to get through to you today, is that you're Daniel, and the drugs are the lions. Are you following me? That's the picture I want you to paint. So the people around you and your behavior has put you where you are now because of your addiction. But you always need to know that the addiction's around you. But here's what I want you to understand, Bryan, and this is what I want you to really grasp, is this right here. When they couldn't find fault with Daniel, I'm going to fast forward a little bit, because it says, so these administrators and satraps went as a group to the king and said, may his king Darius live forever. And so they got him to make an edict that said that if anybody praised anybody other than the king's gods of the king, then he should put them to death, because they knew Daniel was a man of faith. So that's what they did. And so the king answered, this is down here in verse 12. So the king answered, the decree stands in accordance with the law, and Medes and Persians may not, or which cannot be, repealed. Then they said to the king, Daniel, who is one of the exiles from Judah, pays no attention to you, your majesty, butt kissing, or to do, that's not the Bible, by the way, that's my own. He will say 3 times, or he still prays 3 times a day, basically to his God. And so the king, who loved Daniel, kind of didn't have any choice. They forced the king into the corner. And so the king had to throw Daniel into the lion's den. But Daniel stood strong in his faith. Remember Joshua 1:9, be strong and courageous. You need to be strong and courageous. And you need to stand like Daniel stood in the lion's den. And so a stone was brought. This is going to 17. A stone was brought and placed over the mouth of the den. And the king sealed it with his own signet ring and said, signet rings of his nobles, so that Daniel's situation might not be changed. In other words, he was committed. He had to do this. But here's the interesting part. Then the king returned to his palace and spent the night without eating and without entertainment being brought to him, and he could not sleep. So he loved Daniel. I don't think he realized it. At first light, the king got up and hurried to the lion's den. Where he came near to the den, he called Daniel in an anguished voice, Daniel, your servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve continually, been able to rescue you from the lions? I'm going to stop right there, and I'm actually going to conclude. Bryan, God has saved you from the lions. You are exactly where you're supposed to be. If it takes longer than 60 days, because you were talking yesterday about how you got on this new medication, then stay longer than 60 days. Do what you have to do to be right mentally, physically, and spiritually. A lot of times I hear you talk about your physical fitness, which is fantastic, but your mental fitness and your spiritual fitness need to be on par as well. So that way, when you come into the lion's den, you're ready to stand, buddy. You're ready to stand. I told you. What makes Navy SEALs and Delta Force operators and all those guys so good isn't the fact that they're that good, is that they train that often to be that good. If it wasn't for the element of fitness, mental, physical, and in this case, spiritual fitness, we would get our butts kicked all the time. I guarantee it. It's the same way in the Christian atmosphere, it's in the Christian environment, in your walk. You need to be mentally acute to what's going on around you as well. So, along with your memory verse, Philippians 4:12, I think it is, be anxious in nothing, but with prayer and supplication, go before the Lord, right? Giving all things to him who works those for the purpose of his plan. And I'm totally summarizing. And I don't want you to memorize Daniel. I just want you to see the story in a new light and a new element. Yes, Daniel was brave for being tossed in a lion's den. Yes, Daniel stood with integrity. But moreover, the bigger picture, if you get to the root of everything, he knew he was standing with a faithful God. And he was going to be a witness and a testimony. In fact, if you read a little bit further, it talks about how Darius then said to everybody, we're going to now praise the God of Daniel. And he puts those other administrators and satraps to death. Interesting how that happens. So that's what I'm hoping you're going to get out of this. And again, I'm just going to keep giving you Bible verses and stories and parables and things like that, because not only do I want you to eat physically clean, right, so you can be mentally clean and be healed, I want you to be spiritually cleaned and eat spiritual clean food as well. So with that being said, buddy, we love you. We're praying for you. Think about you all the time. And you're never far from our thoughts, man. We talk about you a lot and pray for you often. Love you, man. See ya.